Hello, I'm Adam. So I have Tourette's, ADHD, OCD, but it's not as bad nearly as much as it used to be. I don't even think I have really any OCD tendencies anymore that I could think of. I struggle a bit with anxiety, mainly sometimes just self-anxiety, I think, with the pressure like that. But other than that, I love to sing for fun. Singing gets me, it distracts me from, I guess, some of the, well, it makes me feel better in regards to some of the anxiety I feel sometimes and all that. So I think having a hobby that you can really concentrate on and put all your effort into is probably very good when you struggle with mental health issues. It kind of gives you something that you can feel like gives you meaning in your life, something to strive and work towards. So yeah, that's me. That's my story. I was on The Voice in 2016 for singing, obviously. What else would you do on The Voice? Just talking, maybe. But that's my story. Yeah, it's great to meet you guys.
I was just wondering, basically, I'm guessing when you started out, your aim was to just sort of spread the word about, obviously, Tourette's awareness, what it actually is, and not obviously what the media presents it to be. But did you ever think, because I know I've been doing a bit of awareness recently and I've had some response that I wasn't expecting, did you ever imagine you would get such a strong positive response as you have? Did you ever think you would be where you are now?
No, I didn't think anything of it. So when I started the channel, I had seen other people making videos of their Tourette's and stuff, and it kind of inspired me to do it myself. I thought that maybe, it would help out a bit, but I wasn't going into it with a full-on plan of helping spread awareness around the world and stuff. I just thought, well, let me share my little slice of my story and maybe some people can relate. So I uploaded that Tics in Class video and then basically signed out of that account and went back into my personal YouTube account just to watch videos for the next couple of months. And I didn't sign onto it for ages. And then when I did go back onto it one day, it had like 7,000 views. And that was huge to me because that was after like 6 months or something. And I was like, whoa, people actually care. And that, that kind of gave me the idea to start making some videos. I had probably about maybe 50 subscribers at the time or something. And I was like, yeah, let's just make some videos. I've always liked trying to discuss like advice topics with people and that to try and help out others with their lives. Because I find it helps myself as well. If you can help others and give them advice on, their situation, if they're dealing with anything that's conflicting with their life, and you can give them advice that helps them, it'll probably help you in some way as well. I find a lot of the life lessons that I've learned have been from situations like that. So yeah, I never thought I'd be in the position where I could talk to the whole world about stuff like this. So it can put a bit of pressure on you sometimes. I think like the whole idea of having that big reach to people, and that people dream of it, but when it actually happens, it's very different to what you would expect it to be. And there's a lot of pressure on you to say the right thing because of course if you I'm not an expert in what I do with this stuff. I've got my experiences, but I'm not a doctor. So it can be very tough when you get to this position and people are asking you a lot of questions and people will be emailing you with their problems and stuff. And sometimes you don't know the answer. It can be tough. I guess it's probably just best to be honest, but I also, I sidetrack and talk about everything. So I know the question started off as, did you ever expect yourself to be in this position? And I've gone and spoken about every topic under the sun, but.
You're good, brother. You're all good. Thanks for answering that.
No, thanks for the question.
I have another question. When did you get diagnosed? Like, what was the last straw before you decided, like, we need to go to the doctor's office and get me diagnosed, like, now?
Yeah, so when I was a kid with my Tourette's, it wasn't as bad. It was kind of just like some minor tics and stuff that was never really picked up on. So, I mean, I did hear them. My parents would be like, why are you doing that? Like, stop, you look funny or whatever. But it wasn't in a mean way because they didn't know. But then it was when I was 14, I basically, like one of the days I woke up and started, like, I started having this drop, like going on occasionally, and I wasn't too sure what it was. No one really was. My parents weren't. It was a very stressful time because I didn't know what was going on. My parents didn't know what was going on, so we didn't know what to do. We went to a doctor. The doctor, they didn't really help out. You know, I ended up going to a hospital because my tics were so bad, just trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Like, why has this happened to him all of a sudden and that? And they couldn't figure it out. So then eventually that's when, you know, get the appointment with a neurologist, eventually get diagnosed with Tourette's, and that's when the whole journey kind of started. So it took a while to get the diagnosis, maybe like a month or 2 months, just because there was so many checks to make sure that it wasn't something else, that it wasn't, you know, some other secondary thing that was caused by something that they're missing. So it was a fairly long and arduous process, but yeah, it was good when I did find out, because it helps me take steps towards learning how to cope with it. Well, I mean, the first step was medication, where it's a tough experience I had with medication, because in some regards it can definitely help reduce the severity of tics in some people, not always. And with anxiety, like the antidepressants and stuff like that can help. But again, there's a balance, because I do think that you can put yourself on medication to have that crutch, or to help you if it's severe enough. Like with my Tourette's, I don't take medication for my Tourette's anymore, because I found I haven't needed to. And it was my goal to get off of the medication, because I was taking a lot of tablets every day. And it was kind of worrying me a bit. I didn't want to be. So I've decreased my medication over time, and I've tried to learn how to cope with the symptoms of my disorders, like without medication. So the anxiety, I'm trying to practice mindfulness, trying to clear my head and try and stop the negative thoughts when they come in. It's a tough thing to do, but if you practice some meditation or something like that to try and train your brain's muscle to actually be able to switch over and focus on something that's not negative, then I think, you know, it's a good thing to work on. So yeah. What was the question again? It was about the diagnosis, and I've just gone on about something. I always do that. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did answer my question. Don't worry. The question was, like, what was the last straw before you went to the doctors?
Oh. Yeah. So I think it was basically that pressure. I just felt it was very confusing for my parents and myself. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I was shaking my head, and like I was losing my place with reading. So I went to my mom crying one day, and I was like, "Mom, I can't read." So then finally she decided she needed to like take me to the doctors to get diagnosed. So that was the last straw for me.
And it can be a scary thing, because you don't know what's going on, but then when you find out that it's not that strange and there's nothing that, you know, you'll live. Yeah. Okay. You'll be able to read eventually, and stuff like that. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Did anybody else get tested for seizures before they were diagnosed?
Okay, so
sorry.
No, but what I was gonna say is Auden is gonna join in a few minutes. So, yeah.
I'm just gonna go grab some water, guys. I'll be back in a sec.
I've never had anything with seizures either.
I had an MRI done just to like make sure it wasn't anything else, but that was the only other thing.
I have had an
Actually, I have been tested for seizures since I forgot about that.
I never got tested for seizures. I walked into the room with my neurologist, and he looked at me and immediately told me I had Tourette.
That happened to me too.
It was weird because like I was in China, and then that was like, and then like my tics were like very sudden onset, and then I was there for like a month, so this was like a week into like being in China, and then like during like the third week or something, Mom just like, okay, we're going to a neurologist.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Also because I don't understand medical jargon in Mandarin. So.
Logan, I don't know if you saw, we had someone join halfway through there. Chris, I don't know who that is, but they may want to introduce themselves or may not. I don't know.
My phone's about to die, so I'm gonna go.
Muted,
But
Logan.
it was really nice to meet everyone.
Oh my god, that's so confusing.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks
I hope
for
to stay in touch
coming.
with you guys.
Hi.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Bye. I can't hang up.
Nice meeting you as well.
Nice meeting you.
See you later, Carly.
Logan, if she can't hang up, I think you can boot her. Not to be mean at all.
I can't figure out how to get out.
Yeah, I heard her say she can't hang up, and I don't want her
She
to.
can't leave. Get rid of
Boot me
her.
if you want.
I don't want Carly to be stuck in Zoom land with us. So
that would be a time. But it was really nice meeting you guys. I'm gonna try to follow you all on Instagram.
Yeah, nice.
welcome back. It got really quiet without you.
Well, I'm not going anywhere now.
Well, I actually had something to say to Adam regarding what he said earlier about training your brain's muscles, because I'm familiar with that as well. And it's funny that you say that, because I was just talking to Johnny about it. He had told me that he has trouble sleeping at night, and a while ago I was actually in the same position. And I went from only getting a couple hours of sleep to being able to get asleep and staying asleep all night just by training my brain's muscles to do so. And I feel like if anyone's on here with severe tics and you get to the point sometimes where you can't get any relief at all, he's not lying about the training the brain. That is definitely something that I have done, especially when I hit rock bottom, where I can't sleep at night and I'm suffering. I've taught myself on certain occasions, I don't know how to explain it. It takes time, but I definitely see what you mean, Adam, and I'm doing the same as well.
That's why I say like strengthening the muscles, because you can't quite think of exactly. It's hard to explain sometimes, but I try and use analogies to kind of understand, because you're using that part of your brain, and the more you use it, the more you'll build it up, and it'll be easier to use. So one thing that I've been working on, for example, is focus. So in this digital age we live in, it's very hard to pay attention to just one thing, especially with ADHD and that. So I've been, like during periods of work, I'll turn off my phone and put it to the side and work on something else. If I want to work on my music for a bit, then I'll set aside. I think for me, it works very well to set some time aside to do it. So I'll say, okay, for the next hour, I'm going to work on like Superpowers lyrics, writing some new lyrics or something like that, because I'm reworking the song. So like that's what I've been doing at the moment. So I'll set some time aside for that, and I'll just focus on that, because otherwise I'll be switch tasking and moving from writing music to checking my phone to doing all this stuff. And it's not training my brain to stick with one task at one time and then move on to the next one, because otherwise I'll be writing music while stressing about work the next day, while thinking about what we're having for dinner tonight. And I guess it's easy to kind of just let yourself wander those thoughts all the time, but it's probably important to train yourself to recognize when you're having thoughts that aren't relevant to what you're doing, and just not stopping them, but letting them just kind of exist, but focusing on something else. Because I think a lot of my anxiety, for example, comes from stressing about everything in the day at all times. So even if I've got work tomorrow, I'll be stressing about it today, even though it's Sunday. And I'm like, well, what's the point? It's not work time yet. Why should I be stressing about work? And certain things like that, I think the more you can learn to, or just at least try and not think about it. Well, not necessarily not think about it, because if you think about not thinking about something, then you are thinking about it. So it's a tough one, but it takes a lot of work. It is difficult in the beginning. But I think meditation can probably help with it, like using that Headspace app, for example, or Smiling Mind. I know there's that one as well. I find those very like guided kind of meditation is, yeah, it's just cool to help relax yourself and clear your mind for the day, I guess. So yeah, I think that
I agree.
brain training is probably something everyone should be working on at some points in the day or their life. Here's the little doggy. Hello.
So I want to scream "What is up, Tourettes" here real quick, but I'm not gonna, just so we can get the.
What is up, Tourettes?
There you go. That's what I'm used to hearing. Hey.
The classic one.
So
Yes.
I have a question, if I can. First of all, I'm proud to say I probably was one of those 50 original subscribers. You were.
That's so cool. Thank you.
Just a weak little tyke. So and stuff. Did you think that the YouTube channel would explode like it has? And I know you've kind of backed off of it. Have you ever thought about coming back to it at all?
Yes. So, I mean, at the moment, I've started trying to make videos again. So I had a new video today go up at 5 a.m. my time. It's tough because the problem I had with YouTube, the one thing that kind of was stressing me out a lot was what direction to take the channel in, like what exactly videos do. Because if you make videos on Tourette's all the time, then it's you might run out of topics to make. It can get very difficult to start thinking about more topics to do with Tourette's. But I guess you also run the risk of becoming an echo chamber, because if my videos, I'm not necessarily 100% factual all the time, because I can't be. I mean, who can be? I don't know if there's anything I've said that's not correct. Maybe there is. And I mean, we live in an age where information is spread around the world, and sometimes it's not correct, and that can cause a lot of problems. So there's a lot of pressure to be correct and truthful online. And I guess my problem was just with what video to make, the expectations people had as well. I think a lot of the subscribers came from videos like Superpowers, or Singing with Tourette's, or my Tourette's in the airport. And one thing I struggle with like the thinking is how many of these people are subscribed to me because they want to, well, one, learn about Tourette's and deal with their mental health and stuff. Who maybe they're subscribed to me because of my singing and my music and stuff, or three, are they just subscribed to me to have a laugh at the tics that I'm doing online and stuff, you know? And my mind will always kind of battle with those three. And, you know, it's very easy to, whenever you see people commenting on videos, there's always going to be people that will comment negative stuff. And I find the negative comments are the ones that stick with you. You don't think about the positive ones throughout the day. You think about that one negative one that you saw in the comments, which I think it sucks how that works, because there's so many positive comments, but the negative ones are the ones that'll really get you down. But that's why, for me, for example, I try and, like, my girlfriend Bethany, she helps me out with the YouTube stuff, so she'll read through most of the comments, and then if there's ones that are like that, she'll filter out the good ones for me, and then I'll reply to the good ones and all that stuff. So I don't actually have to see the negative comments, because you don't need that stuff, you know. You don't need all that negative feedback in your life constantly, unless it's constructive, you know. Negative feedback's not always bad. It can be constructive, but there's ways of saying things to people that can help them be better, rather than just insulting what they've done. So I'm walking around now, yeah. I think that's
Adam.
Oh, there's another question there.
Yeah, Adam, Mindy had a question. I don't know if you see it. Do you have self-harm tics, like punching, kicking, etc.? And if so, how do you handle that?
So I used to have ones that would hurt me. I used to have punching ones. So I'd punch myself across the face. And that wasn't very fun. It lasted for a bit. Had ones where I'd punch myself in the stomach as well. In terms of how you handle it, it's not one size fits all. So you look at, like, Jess Tom, for example. She has a lot of punching tics where she punches her chest, and she wears padded gloves to combat the pressure sores that'll be created from that. There's all different ways you can cope with it. I know some people like wasn't it Cameron, the Cameron Schubert. I did the documentary with him, that little guy that has Tourette's. He would hit himself in the testicles constantly. I'm like, the poor kid, that'd suck. And yeah, for him, he hasn't come up with a way to cope with it. And sometimes I don't have the answers for it all the time, I guess, because I don't know how I'd cope in that situation either. I don't know what you could do to circumvent it. I think in a situation like that, maybe trying out like cognitive behavioral therapy or something like that to try and potentially redirect the tick to a different part of your body, maybe that's probably a good thing to check out if it is doing harm to you, because physical harm will stay with you, and the more you're harming yourself now, it's gonna affect you. Like, I had a lot of neck tics and all that when I was younger, and my body's pretty sore these days. Even though I'm not ticking that much anymore, I've still got a lot of tension around those areas because of the years of throwing my body around. But yeah, I guess I don't have the answer to every situation. So yeah, if you have an injury already, yeah, that's not good, because that could put further damage. Well, that could create further damage to that region of your body. In a situation like that, if you're not on medication probably, well, it's good to talk to your doctor first, because if it is doing harm to yourself, then that is a case where you would go for further treatment, whether that's medication or, depending on the severity, maybe it's deep brain stimulation or something like that, which that's invasive surgery. So you'd probably want that as a last resort. But yeah, I think in a situation like that, your doctor's probably the best person to get advice from.
Adam, one of the things that I really appreciated in your YouTube video, and I mentioned that I go around and do presentations. I actually do presentations all over our country in the United States. And I use one of your clips in my presentations a lot. Hopefully you're not too mad. I could probably get in trouble for that, but I still do it. The one that really I thought was particularly impressive, and I'll get to my question here, is the one where, sorry, my dog, is the one where you showed a small tick attack on the YouTube video. I thought that was pretty amazing. And so I share that with a lot of the people who don't understand what we go through. But my question is, was it hard for you to put that vulnerable side of you out there? I mean, I assume it is for all of us. And what made you go ahead and go through with doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, as any teenager, teenagers are always facing that awkward kind of social part of their life where they're trying to fit in and all that. And I would struggle to fit in a bit at school sometimes. And I guess the Tourette's made that even more difficult in some cases. So wanting to actually put stuff online, it wasn't necessarily, I didn't want my videos to really be that popular with my Tourette's, because, well, that's not what I wasn't planning to kind of stand up in front of everyone and show off that vulnerable side of me exactly like that. So for that, like, tick attack, for example, usually when I'll edit my videos, I'm cutting out all the spots where I'm not talking. So if there's a section where I'm just ticking, I'll cut it out, because I'm like, well, what's the point? And then people go in the videos and like, where's this ticks gone? There's no ticks. But I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I cut them out because otherwise it takes up too much time. But a section like that, I thought, that's when I did have a tick attack. So I was ticking nonstop for a bit. They just kept coming. And I was like, well, this does happen sometimes, so why not leave it in the video for this once, just so that people can see, you know what, I do cut out some of the ticks, but this is the reality that we're kind of faced with, you know. While I may be able to censor them or cut them out for your viewing purposes, in my life, it doesn't stop. It'll, you know, that's kind of, it's showing the reality of it. And it is vulnerable. It's tough to put yourself on there looking like that, because yourself, you can look at it and be like, wow, you know, it can hurt sometimes to see it, to know that you don't really have control over that. But I think it's something we deal with what are we supposed to do? You can either sit there and be upset about it and wish that it never happened to you, or you can stand up and own it and say, stuff it, I've got this. It's not going to stop me from doing whatever the hell I want to do. So, I guess it's more so about promoting that positive attitude, showing that even though there are people that have this thing, we can still be just as confident or anything, or normal's a funny word, just as we can do anything that anyone else can do. I think it's important to show that for all of these disabilities that people face, because a lot of people will hear these disabilities and immediately they'll associate these stereotypes with people. So if you hear that someone has autism, you immediately have a picture of what characteristics they're going to be displaying in that. And I think it's important for us to stand up beyond the diagnosis and show that, we've got just as much of an amazing personality as every other unique person out there. So, yeah, I think it's probably best for every single one of us to stand up and shout and say, hey, look, we're okay.
We got another question from Mindy here for you, Adam, and maybe to all of us. But just so you know, you are really educating and advocating for our community in America a lot, and you don't even realize it. So
thank you.
We thank you.
I've never been to America yet, and I really want to go.
No, you don't. Not in our current state of affairs. You don't.
Yeah, maybe not.
I'd rather go over where you are instead of stay here. So. So Mindy's question is, have you guys found that being around animals help your tics, or a favorite hobby? I'm around horses a lot, so they seem to help, or when I practice my photography. I'll answer real quick first. Obviously, that's part of the reason why I got the little fart right here. But for me, obviously, music is very helpful. Most of you know my story that I am a musician myself, choir teacher, theater teacher, and singer and performer and actor. And when I do all that stuff, I don't tic. So yeah, I think both of those, the animals help for me and the hobby helps for me. So the rest of you, I guess, can take off.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think animals also seem to really help with anxiety. I guess that's because whenever we see animals, we seem to get that loving, cute affection. We just want to squish it to death, in a loving way. We get that feeling for animals, and it definitely helps. I mean, I find if I'm working I work during the day. I work as a programmer. So I'm a web developer. So I'll spend my day job doing that. If I get stressed out because I'm stuck on a problem and I can't figure out how to solve something, I'll just go and chill with my dog, and lie down with my dog and let her lick my face and all that stuff. Get kisses from my dog, because it really helps with the distract. I just want to squish your dog right now. It's so cute. I got a Dachshund as well, so it's a miniature Dachshund. So I'm loving it. But
I've
yeah,
got a Jack Russell, but she's lying here asleep behind me, so I don't want to disturb her.
So cute.
But I'll see if you can maybe.
Don't care about Tourette's anyways, do they? So they're not going to judge you. That's another great thing as well. The animals are always there to listen to your problems, always there to give you affection when you're feeling down. And I think the best thing about animals, or maybe dogs, because cats, they can do it, but not as much. Dogs, my favorite part about a dog is when you come home at the end of the day and they've been waiting for you all day, and they get so excited and run up to you and jump up on you and just they can't stop whining and licking you, and it's there's no better feeling than that.
I woke up when I said that, so here's her here.
Aww.
Anybody else have any questions? I've still got a few. I wrote down a whole bunch before we ever got going here. I was prepared.
I have one.
I'm the teacher,
Yeah.
Kind of changing the subject a little bit, but I figured I'd ask since you mentioned DBS, Adam, and I was actually supposed, before COVID hit, I was actually supposed to go to Texas and get ready to get deep brain stimulation, and because of COVID, it did not happen. And now that we're on this video chat and everything, I was just wondering if I could if you could give me some advice as far as, like, do you think it's necessary? Do you think, is there some way, like, I could continue to work on my brain and not have to have that? Because there are a lot of negative side effects that could happen that, obviously I don't want.
Yeah, that's, I mean, firstly and foremost, I'll do an disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. So any of your doctor's advice should come, above and beyond mine. But I think, I've known people who have had DBS and still experience tics. So there was one girl at Tourette's camp who, she was on an Australian documentary back in the day. She had really bad Tourette's, then had DBS, and it was great. Her tics had basically had gone away, and she was fine. But I think it was a year later or years later, they came back just in the same severity, and she's it's not as bad as it was, but she's still ticking. It's still bad. So in that kind of scenario, it'd be like, well, what was the point for that invasive surgery in the first place? Where did it get you? I think another factor would be age as well. If you're still a teenager, my opinion would be, well, if it's not doing any permanent physical damage to you, and if it's not stopping you from doing stuff that will, well, if it's decreasing your quality of life, if it means that you can't look after yourself, for example, or if you can't do stuff like that, then if it's a last resort, it's probably good. But if you think that you can handle the tics that you've got right now, and maybe most of it is the way other people react to it, maybe you don't have a problem with the tics as much. I think that's important to figure out. Are you the one that has the problem with your own Tourette's, or is it the people around you that have the problem with your Tourette's and are wanting to get rid of it? Because if you can cope with it, and if you can find ways to deal with it during this time, you never know, the severity could reduce as you get older. It might not, some people will have severe tics their whole life. In that scenario, maybe it's good, but who knows? In the future, there might be some other treatment for it. DBS is the most, it's the biggest thing we've got at the moment for Tourette's in terms of like a cure, but you never know what could come up in the next couple of years. So I guess a big decision like that, I would always err on the side of caution of, I would always aim to not want to get it, but if you have to, then it's, I guess you weigh up the benefits for yourself. But I think for most people, it's probably better to learn to deal with it yourself, because not only will it help you accept who you are a bit more, it'll help you learn how to control it a bit better, because we all have these tics, and not everyone, but you can feel that like premonition, that urge that comes before it. Like for me, for some of my vocal tics, I'll feel either something in my stomach or in my neck, or in the back of my head, and then the tic will come and it'll just burst out. And I started to like focus on that feeling beforehand, just to kind of identify what it is. And I used to sometimes like almost train or test myself to like controlled suppression of tics. So you might sit there and see how long you can stop a tic from happening, and you focus on that urge and try and figure out what exactly it is, because the more you do that, you might get to the point, not necessarily, but you might get to the point where you can find that it's easier to hold on to that feeling and maybe even let it dissipate in some situations. That was my experience.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, so I mean, if you can work on something yourself rather than having someone open up your head and stick some nose in your brain, then maybe that's the route to go. But as I said, it's case by case, and if your doctor really thinks that it's the best thing for you and it'll help you, then if you're okay with it, go for it. I say go for it. But again, it's case by case.
We had another question in the chat here for you, Adam. It says, "Hi, it's from Chanel. Hiya, Adam. I have a question. What's the best way to tell other people about Tourette's in school and college?" And then you had a couple people second that question. I'm being one of them because I had that on there for you.
Right. Cool. So for me, in my experience, it's always best, like, let's take school, for example. So usually the first person you'd want to be explaining the Tourette's to is the teacher, because if the teacher's older, they know a bit more about life, a lot more about life than the kids in the classroom, and they'll be more mature in dealing with it. If you can get the teacher on your side, that's the biggest part of the battle, because the way the teacher reacts to your tics will influence how the other kids react to the tics as well. And I've had some teachers where they'll go off at you for it, and that can cause children in the classroom to not pay as much respect to you in regards to it and stuff as well. I find the best way, everyone's got a different kind of preference on how they would like to be treated with their Tourette's, I guess. With me, I was very much, I don't care if you want to laugh at something I say. That's fine, because I understand that some of the tics I did say or some of the noises I did make were funny. But again, it's to an extent. If you sit there the whole time in the class laughing at me, it's different. If you're laughing, if you're just snickering at something that popped out or whatever during the class, as long as it's not distracting the teacher, because I was always worried, I don't want to distract the class. I don't want to interfere with their learning, because then the teacher will get upset. Then the teacher will be a bit more on edge of me, a bit less lenient. Because I think we have to remember as well, we do have Tourette's, but if we do find ourselves sitting in the classroom and our stress is a bit high or something, and we're ticking a lot more than usual, maybe for the rest of the class sake, it might be a good idea to step outside and just, try and relax, if that's going to help reduce your tics at all. And then again, the problem with that is you could lose out on classwork. So maybe a counter to that would either be to catch up with the teacher afterwards, or have some services that you partake in that can help you stay up to date in class if you are falling behind. Or another way would be to, like, one thing I did at school was, if my tics were getting bad and I was working in class, I would go, I had permission to take my work and go work in another room by myself. That's something I'd organized with all the teachers. They were happy with it. When I did tests at school, I'd have my own room, my own private room, because then if I tick, I don't care, because I can just focus on my work. Whereas if I'm sitting in a classroom trying to do a test and I'm ticking, it's super quiet in a classroom, and you start worrying about everyone else and if they're able to concentrate, and if you're thinking, oh, don't tick because you're going to annoy everyone. So in situations like that, it's best to get rid of that thought in your mind, and the easiest way to do that is to change your environment. So put yourself in an isolated room, or wherever you feel comfortable. If it's maybe sitting in maybe you've got like an area that's designated for learning assistance or something like that, where kids can go and get help with homework during whatever time. Maybe you go and you speak to them there, organize to have an area where you can come sit, do your work if you need to. If you're feeling a bit overwhelmed in class, then yeah, it's good to just have that as an option, because you don't have to use it, but as long as you know it's there, it'll help reduce some of that stress from you, because you can always just know that you can get up and go to your place where you can just calm down if you need to, or let out all your tics and whatever, as not in the way of anyone else, so that you don't feel pressured, you don't feel embarrassed by it, but also so that you're not interrupting everyone else's class. Because if you do interrupt other people's learning, it's fair to assume that not everyone is going to be happy with that, because people are, for example, at school to learn. And if someone is getting in the way of your progress, even if it's not their fault, it still can, people can snap off. Not everyone's as rational as you'd like them to be. People aren't always super nice. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they're human. So yeah, I think that's probably my advice with that. Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point. As the only person who's the teacher in here with Tourette, there's a lot of similarities in what you just said. I have some of the same issues that I deal with. I think that's interesting. Yeah. I had a question. Sorry, someone else have a question?
I have a question for you. How do you find teaching with Tourette's? What's the challenges with that?
There are no challenges. I'm the teacher. There are no challenges. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. So it was very scary at first, and you touched on a couple of things I thought were really cool. When I was growing up, like everybody, I was told it was going to go away when I became an adult, and blah 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 blah. And so it did, kind of, when I was in university or college, however, wherever you are in the world, when you call it. And then it kind of came back in my mid-20s, and I've been going strong ever since, and I'm 42 right now. We deal with it right off the bat. I'm very open and honest about it. And of course, the first couple of weeks are usually awkward. But once we get settled in, we actually do just fine. They just kind of ignore it after a while. It just becomes a part of the class. And when we're having a particularly odd day, they know what words to say and what things to do to get me going. And if the class just doesn't want to work, they know how to get the teacher off track. So, but it's very good. I was very shocked at the support I've had because I didn't think it would be that way.
That's so good.
Yeah, but it's
And
a lot of fun, and I've been able to meet a lot of people. So.
Yeah, and as a teacher with Tourette's as well, it's really nice because the next generation will be exposed to an adult with Tourette's, which if you're an adult with Tourette's, you've dealt with it most likely a lot longer than the kids with Tourette's. So you've probably had to explain many times before what it is. So it helps. You get used to explaining what your Tourette's is and educating people. And I think it's important for those role model positions in our society, such as the teachers in the schools that are teaching our kids. It's good to have that exposure to some of these different disorders and challenges that people face in real life, because then it helps become a bit more normalized. You know, the kids will see it and think, if in their future, if they're in year 10 one day, grade 10, and they have another student that's got Tourette's, they'll be like, oh, I remember the teacher back, or whatever, you know, that had Tourette's. It helps kind of put an anchor with that and help normalize it. So that's really cool to hear about that. It's really great to hear that they just let it be part of the background noise, because I found that in my class as well. A lot of people would say that they don't even notice the tics most of the time. Most of the time, you're the one that's paying attention to it the most. You think that everyone else is getting annoyed by it. It's not true. It's it's most likely just you worrying about them at the time, because yeah, they're just like you know, it'll fade into the background. People won't notice. It's true.
I think that's very good. The most unique situation I ever had, Adam, and kind of follow up to your question there, was when the first student with Tourette came into my room. Then, pardon the expression, but all hell broke loose, and it was kind of ugly. But we dealt with it. We moved on. It went real well. We have a question in the chat from Auden. How do you deal with Tourette's in public when you're by yourself?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because that's where you can really start to kind of feel a bit alone in the world. Like, I think if there's ever been moments where I'm surrounded by a lot of, because sometimes the loneliest you can feel is when you're surrounded by a bunch of people. And I find that no more true when you are having really bad tics in public and you're by yourself trying to get to a destination or whatever. It can sometimes be scary because, like with my coprolalia, I would yell out stuff. Sometimes I'd yell out racial slurs, and that's not good, especially when you're walking in the city by yourself, because some people can get aggressive with that. I can imagine during this time as well, because it's a very politically unstable time these days. If the people that are suffering with those tics, like politically incorrect tics, that are going out in public by themselves, it's if you do suffer with tics that might get you hit, like, let's put it that way. If you have tics that when you're walking out in public, if you think that saying some of them might make people upset, maybe it's good at this stage to go out in public, not by yourself, with someone else. You know, have a friend or something that's with you, or a parent or anyone, if it's possible. If not, probably I find the best way, if you're ticking a lot, would be to chuck on some headphones and just keep walking. Because then if you're yelling stuff, people aren't going to think it's directed at them. If they turn around and they're like, what did you say to me or whatever, at least, you know, you've got your headphones on and they're not going to bother you. So I guess, yeah, probably don't think about it as much.
You can just say you're on the phone or something.
Yeah, or maybe you want to listen to a podcast while you're walking or something to distract yourself from the fact that you are ticking in public and people are around you. Because the more you think about that, the more you're going to tick. So, oh, sorry, I forgot. So, apologies.
We got a couple more questions here. They're both very good. From my good friend Johnny, he says, how has lockdown affected your tics? It's caused his to skyrocket, mine as well. And then the other one was, and it's also a very good one, how do you deal with Tourette's when you're on an airplane? So those two are the next two questions for you.
So lockdown, I haven't found it has had any effect on my Tourette's per se. I guess mainly because it hasn't really affected my lifestyle as much, because before lockdown, I was working from home anyways. So nothing's really changed for me besides for the fact that I can't go out and hang out with friends. But in terms of the ticks, I'm interested in the ticks increasing during lockdown. Would that be because of like stress of being
routine
quarantined?
change, I think.
Right, routine change. That would make sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because that can definitely flare up the ticks. That's true.
For me,
It's
it's
interesting.
for me, it's been the stress and the anxiety of the uncertain, without a doubt.
Right. Yeah.
Not
sure.
knowing how long this is going to be the new norm for.
That's true, and I find one thing I've been doing during this time, like since I'm 21, and a lot of you guys are younger than me as well in here. It's we don't have to be staying up to date with the news all the time on what's going on. We're probably not going to be able to affect it as much. For me personally, when it all did start, I was constantly in the news, looking at everything because it's fascinating. It's like, wow, what's going on? But again, the news loves to focus on negative stuff because it's what gets the views. So it's not always in your best interest to be keeping up to date with everything. So that's why recently I've just, I can see what's going on in the world. Me keeping up to date with all of it isn't going to change the outcome. If it's going to come out all right, it'll come out all right whether I'm following the news or not. So I choose myself at this moment to focus on myself and what's making me happy and all that, so that I don't have to stress about the outcome of the world. Of course, if it's more personal things like bills due and stuff that it is directly affecting, that's a different aspect. But I guess it's good to stress about that then in its own case. Instead of stressing about coronavirus and the bills and all that stuff, you just stress about your own personal situation rather than the situation of the world, because it's a lot of weight that if you try and bear it all on your shoulders and think that, you've got to be doing your part to save the world, you're going to stress yourself out and burn yourself out, and it's not needed, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, just with talking about the news and things, my mum would even tell you, and anybody that knows me, I still do to this day. I try and pull myself away from the news, but it's like I've got this bit of string that's pulling me. Like, I literally help but check the news. But then when I do, I sink into a lower depression thinking, oh, shoot, what's happening? This is what's happening. This is in my area. This is, but it's like my head's telling me you have to check it.
Right.
Like
and that exactly. It's that addiction type of, I find a lot of, Tourette's almost has that same association with addiction, and OCD as well. You've got that urge, and it's so strong, and then you give into it, and it manifests itself in these different ways. Like one way would be, checking the news. You have that urge really to just check the news or something. I think that's kind of that same. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about like training your brain and building those muscles. Almost is when you do recognize, and it's not easy. It's easy. It's you're not going to succeed all the time with this, but when you do feel that urge to do something like that, to watch the news or something like that, try and, if you've got a hobby, if you like playing the piano or something, do that. Maybe you want to go for a walk. Instead of checking the news, do something else. Try and train yourself that every time you have that feeling that you want to check the news or something, for example, or maybe it could be anything in your life that's generating stress, try and substitute checking the news with maybe working on a hobby that you like, or maybe watching an entertaining video on YouTube or something like that. That's not gonna depress you, because if you can spend most of your day, if you can spend your day kind of doing things that make you feel good about yourself and make you feel better, then your life overall is going to feel better, and you're going to feel more fulfilled with it, because you're not spending it thinking about all the negative stuff.
And we've got the question about the plane, being on an airplane. And I know you're on it a lot, so we got another one right after that.
Airplanes have been some interesting experiences for me, because I've been on an airplane with Tourette's by myself, which It's the experiences range from one side of the spectrum to the other. Sometimes there's no problem at all. Sometimes you can walk through the airport, and bomb and all that stuff, and nothing's going to go on because sometimes people just get it and they'll be okay with it. Other times it might not be that easy. You might get stopped by security. I think it's important in those situations to remain calm, not get aggravated, which in the past, it's easy to say, but in the past I have gotten upset at security guards for almost treating us like second-class humans, for like separating the group, because there was three of us with Tourette's, and they basically just separated us and told us to go sit in separate areas. I'm like, okay, fair enough, but you shouldn't be able to tell humans where to sit. So it's something like that. But it's important to keep calm while explaining your situation. I guess in a situation like that where something like that does happen, losing your cool's not gonna help the situation. If you're yelling out stuff already and then you get upset, it's it's not gonna make them wanna. At the end of the day, if the security guards are gonna kick you out of the airport, they're gonna kick you out of the airport. That's their job. If something like that does happen, then you deal with it afterwards by going to whoever you need to go to. But then on the actual plane, I've been on the plane with others with Tourette's as well, and that's myself personally on the plane. I've never had any real problems with people's reactions. Like sometimes people will look around and stuff, but nothing where people are getting stressed out. But I have been on the plane with someone who, as soon as the plane took off, his text just went, "The engine's on fire, we're going down," and he was loud. Like he was sitting like 10 rows in front of me, and the whole plane just, it was scary. Like everyone was scared because they didn't know what was going on, because it was really weird, because once he got on, he hadn't ticked at all, and he just wasn't ticking. He was quiet. I was like, okay. And clearly he must have been like holding in his ticks or something, and then it all just built up, and as soon as we took off, they just exploded, and people got scared. But in a situation like that, I think his mother stood up and said that he's got Tourette's and like that. So if you are the one that's sticking, it's probably good in a situation like that to travel with someone else that maybe could step up and say something for you if you weren't confident enough to say it for yourself. Other than that, I used to carry around business cards that I made off that just explained about my Tourette's and stuff. Like I said, hey, I'm Adam, I've got this condition called Tourette's, it makes me do blah, 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 whatever. So that you don't have to actually talk to someone about it. You can just hand them a business card and walk away. That's as simple as that, because then they read through the situation and hopefully they leave you alone after that. And you don't have to then get into it all if you don't want to, because if you do start conversing about it all with other people, it can make it worse, your tics, and maybe that's not what you want at the time. So it's, as I said, case by case. We all have different ways of dealing with it. For me, I prefer now talking to people about it because I'm used to it. I've done it a lot. I'm more confident with talking about, I've practiced saying, I've said this stuff so many times, it's like, I'm used to saying it. So it helps if you've got a bunch of things you've said already to be able to relay to people. And that's why having some information that you can sit down for 10 minutes and come up with a little paragraph, just a short thing. If you can come up with something that sums up your scenario pretty well, then yeah, chuck on some business cards, give it to people. You don't have to worry about it then.
I think that's a great advice. And it's funny you say that, because as the old guy in the room, I've got the script down pretty well, and I keep on doing the same play. So I understand what you're saying.
It's helpful. It's helpful.
It is very, very helpful. And I think you're great. And Ben, I will tell you, there is a great YouTube video of Adam and two of his buddies in an airport. I would encourage you to watch that. It's really fun. If you want the true experience. And
That's
then,
it.
yeah, Chanel then asked, this is actually for you and me, but I'm going to let you go first because you're the all-star and I'm just here. What's the best way to tell your parents about the Tourette's?
Oh, that's a good one. I found that was, funnily enough, that was probably the hardest part of the experience. I think the part where I felt stressed the most was actually saying something to your parents, which is weird because their parents, it's also like, I know that they've supported me throughout all of this, but I guess it was more so the fact that I didn't want to worry them or something like that. Maybe I don't remember exactly how I was feeling because I was 14 when it was all going on, all the stuff with getting diagnosis and stuff. But I do remember it was hard because, my parents were worried. Sometimes I'd catch them crying because of it, because it was a tough thing, and that hurts as well. So, because you know that they just want you to be okay. You know, my dad would always say to me, like, he would do anything to just take it off of me and him to have it. And I guess it's a tough time at diagnosis. I find if there's ever going to be not for everyone, but if there's ever going to be like an emotionally kind of roller coaster of a time, it'll be probably around your diagnosis or the time when your tics flare up or something like that. But I guess it just takes time. If it isn't new, if your tics have flared up or something and you've got this diagnosis of Tourette's and your parents are kind of like, you know, flabbergasted by where it all came from, and that it takes time, I guess, for it all to become normal. Like my parents, even 2 years or 3 years after being into it all, if we got out in public and I'd tick something that was like inappropriate or something, sometimes they would you know, like flinch or react or something, and you know, it's just that natural instinct as a parent, I guess, who's responsible for their kid to kind of just have that moment of almost like censorship, trying to just protect your kid or whatever. But it's not, they're not doing it because they are embarrassed by you or something like that. They're just trying to protect you. I guess, yeah, your parents, it's good to approach them with your concerns. If you like, if you are ticking a lot and maybe you want to go see a doctor for some of it, your parents are, if depending on your age, of course, if you're over 18 or I think over 16, yeah, you can go to the doctors by yourself or whatever. But yeah, your parents hopefully should support your maybe not recovery, but treatment or anything like that. I highly doubt if they are your parents, they're going to just say, no, stop it, stay in your room, be quiet, leave me alone. If they do, then there's probably the bigger issues there. But yeah, so your parents will be a support. That's at least in my experience. It was tough at first to kind of converse with them about it and like what it feels for me and that, because they like my parents didn't understand it all at first. It's, you know, it's like, you know, well, why can't you just not do it? You know, it's something that I guess people have got to learn over time, and not everyone's going to understand exactly what it is at first, because if you never knew about Tourette's and someone just came up to you and started telling you about Tourette's, you'd have a lot of questions. You'd have a lot of questions. There'd be a lot of things that you didn't understand about it. But obviously, just like we've all experienced, the more time we've spent learning about it, the more time we've spent dealing with it, we've understood how it can manifest itself and how it is an actual thing that we deal with. And I guess that's, yeah, you just got to get other people around you to see that as well. But you can't force it on them. You got to, I guess, take your time with it. Yeah.
And as the follow-up, Chanel, I will tell you that, and this is probably the reason why I asked Adam to go first, I am the exact opposite. Many of you in here already heard my story, so I'm not going to go into it in depth, but I grew up in a very bad home as an only child, and my parents did not care. They were the ones who said, go lock yourself in the room and shut up because you're annoying to us. But actually, that would sort of true, because they wouldn't have talked to me that much. But anyway, so for me, Chanel, I can't answer the question real well. I never had those kind of discussions with my parents. I just didn't. And I knew, based on watching Adam's videos, that's why I wanted him to go first, because I knew that he had good supporting parents, and I wanted you to hear that story before you heard mine. So yeah, I can't say a whole lot to that. There was a question.
It's tough when making, like, for example, with my videos on YouTube and stuff, to kind of give advice on Tourette's. This is why I love the fact that other people are making channels as well, because we've all got our own unique situation, and my answers don't fit every situation. So it's so good to see that other people are trying to get out there and share their story, because I've got my stories out there. Maybe some people are sitting there and they're like, oh, that doesn't quite help my situation. If you go and make a video talking about your situation, you might help people that are struggling with the same thing, that where I couldn't help them with my video, your video might scratch that itch that they had and help them out. And the more content out there from the more different people, the easier it is for everyone to at least find something that will help them.
I think that's great. You had a question here from Johnny, and Johnny, if I get it wrong, tell me. It says, I actually think I found you through Lewis, Cue Ball. Is it Nickel or Nickel? I don't know which one. And it says, do you watch him?
Yeah, it's
I
Lewis
watched him.
Cubal Nickel. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I watched him when I remember he was my main competitor on YouTube. It was fun. We were having because we were sitting around the same subscriber mark, and it was constantly like at school, my friends would be bringing him up in that, and we were trying to beat the subscriber count because we were even for quite a while. It was really fun. But yeah, his videos were they're interesting. There's probably a lot that I haven't watched. The ones that I did watch, I remember were the ones where he'd read the nursery rhymes and stuff like that. So again, with that situation, it's kind of how I feel about my superpower song on YouTube as well. It's generating awareness, which is great, but my thinking is, where's the viewership coming from? Is it coming from a place that wants to be educated, or is it coming from a place that wants to be entertained? So with my superpowers video, it's very easy for me to get in my head and say, oh, people aren't watching it because of my singing, people are watching it because I'm ticking. Because when you read the comments and everyone's commenting on the Tourette's and what you said with your tics before the song was up, it affects you and you start thinking like that. So in terms of that type of content, I'm not sure what content he's made in the future, but with me, with my superpowers, when I'll talk on that, if I was to do it again, I would probably record the singing and the actual Tourette's stuff separately. I'd probably have an introduction where I'm talking about my Tourette's and then sing in a completely different environment rather than merging the two, because I guess it might have helped my mental health a bit more as well. I guess I'll have to watch some of his latest videos to see kind of what the content is, but I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on Lewis's videos? Maybe you guys watch Lewis's videos and they helped you out, because I'm not entirely sure. If there's anyone that has any input on that, love to hear it.
Yeah, I just love the way he just takes everything in his stride, really. He obviously has his tics, but he just he realizes what his tics actually are, and he just bursts out laughing. He's okay, everything's as much of a surprise to him, and he just I just love watching his reaction to everything, because as many of us has probably happened, his tics tend to surprise him, but say he could say something rude, he could be ticking, and he could go I don't know. I can't think of anything real to think about, but he could say something totally out of the ordinary. It could be really sort of about maybe sexual stuff or anything, and then afterwards he'll just go, no. And it's the way he just goes, no. And yeah, so that's what I mean. I just love the positivity that surrounds the Tourette's community, and it's that sort of thing we need.
It helps normalize it. It helps because some of them can definitely be funny. And with your own Tourette's, if you can learn to laugh at some of your own tics and realize that they are funny, then I guess it'll help as well with your own mental health if someone else laughs at the tics you do, because you can at least understand where it's coming from. Because when people are laughing at the tics you're doing, they're not laughing at you. They don't understand the struggles that you have to go through with it. They don't understand the amount of a toll it has taken on your life, or what it actually, you have to deal with it all the time. For people that just come into your life for a couple of seconds or whatever and see it, for them, they don't think about that stuff because it's too much effort to think about that stuff. We humans don't have enough energy to spend the whole day empathizing with every single person they walk past, because it's just not possible. You'd be falling asleep in the afternoon. So I think it's good to understand that some of our tics can be funny. There, of course, is a line though, and I guess it's probably a personal preference where that line can be drawn. At what point does it become bullying rather than just having a laugh? But again, maybe it's up discussion is where that would come up with. If your friends are the ones that are laughing, it's like I would talk to my friends as well, because some of my tics would spend a lot of time laughing about them because they were funny. But in some situations, I would rarely, like maybe there was a presentation going on by someone who'd come into the school to talk. In that situation, my friends laughing about with me with my tics and stuff isn't going to be very helpful for my stress, for my ability to concentrate or any of that stuff. So in situations like that, I would chat with them and say, you know what, can we maybe not do this now and save it for another time? And if they're good friends, they'll listen and they'll respect that. And I think it's important for us to stand up for those types of situations where we can assert how we want to be treated in situations like that. Because if you close yourself off with it all the time and basically say no one's allowed to laugh ever, then it can be a bit awkward for some people if you do say something that's funny, or if your tic does make a noise that sounds like something that, I don't know, you know. I guess it's well, the famous words that I've said today, case by case.
I'll be honest, sometimes with some of our tics that we have, it'd be kind of impossible not to laugh. You know, if you're expected to just sit there and like not laugh, I'm sorry, you're failing straight away, because we can never be prepared for it, you know. I'll actually be really honest with you. I had a tic a few weeks ago. It caused my mum to laugh. It caused me to laugh. I didn't know where it came from. I'd been at the toilet, washed my hands, dried them, and I came out. And I came through, and I just randomly, out of nowhere, I just ticked. I've washed my hands, I've dried my hands, and I've put my hands away. And I was like, where on earth did that come from? Yeah, like, so
it's amazing. It shows the creativity of the mind, though, sometimes with some of these tics that people come out with. I'm like, where did that come from?
Yeah. But I have met a few people who I've been open with them. I've been like, hey, I've got Tourette's, and I've explained it. And these are the sort of people I like, who don't poke fun at it, but they go, if you tic something funny, is it okay to laugh? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
You know, I actually
and maybe
feel awkward if they don't.
Yeah. And I guess I felt the same way. There may be some people out there who their preference is to have no laughter at all, ever. And don't feel bad for that. If you don't want, if you really aren't comfortable with people laughing when you tic, it's more than okay to say to people, hey,
yeah, sure, right.
Yeah, like, you know, maybe let them know that it's not easy for you. And the more you laugh and pay attention to it, the harder it gets for you. Because, I mean, hopefully people will care.
Adam, we have another question in the chat that says, how do you deal with people asking if your Tourette's is gone when it's calmed down a bit? And I would add on to that, how do you also react to people who think you're faking it or lying?
That's what I'm dealing with a lot at the moment on YouTube. My comments is a lot of people calling the fake card, saying, oh, he faked his Tourette's for TV and for the fame of that. And it's a tough one to deal with, because how do you convince someone? Firstly, I don't think we should have to convince people. I mean, I've been diagnosed with this. It's a struggle that I have. For me, I'm lucky in the fact that it's reduced in severity a lot. Like right now, I've got a couple of tics going on like that one, because I'm concentrating on it a lot in this conversation. Whereas for the most part, that might happen it depends. Sometimes it can happen every couple of minutes. Sometimes it might only happen every like hour or something, you know. It really just depends. Oops, sorry, I think I went off there. Sorry, my phone's messing up. Where's Zoom gone? There it is. In situations like that where people think you're faking it, firstly, don't give them the time of day. I'd say you don't have to waste your effort trying to convince them that it is real. If it's a teacher or something like that, if you're trying to explain to the teacher that you've got it, maybe if it's a teacher, then either if you can't explain to the teacher, then you would speak to the next person. So maybe you go to the principal or something like that, because there's going to be someone you can talk to, for example, in a schooling place like that. But if it's just someone else who's saying you're faking it, you don't have to. You really don't have to waste your time convincing them that it's real, because, well, you don't need to. What's the point? If they don't believe it, so what? You know, it's not going to change anything.
I've got a tip for anyone here who, if anybody says to you that you're faking it, this is one thing I have started saying to people, especially over the last couple of years. I have actually turned around and said to them, you know what, you say I'm faking it. Okay, so yeah, I'm faking it. I constantly want to have muscle strain, pain everywhere. I constantly want to shout vulgar, racist stuff and offend people. I constantly want to be at risk of getting in because people think I'm being abusive towards them. You know, yeah, I'm absolutely faking it. I want to be the centre of attention. I am living the life of Riley here. And then they've all backed down and went, oh, well, I didn't know that's what it consisted of. I was like, yeah, well, don't comment unless you know.
That's a really good one.
It's really, it starts to peeve me off, actually.
Adam, we have another question from Chanel, and Chanel got in trouble for this because she calls me Mr. Lane. That's the teacher. He's not here. Anyway, it says, what would you say are the worst parts of having Tourette syndrome for you and me? So go ahead and have at it.
Oh, it sounds interesting. So this will have to be my last one, guys, just as I'll have to go after this. But the hardest parts of Tourette syndrome, besides the tics, I guess, let me think. Because the hard part for me, firstly, was the physical tics, because I'm experiencing the pain from that. I think the other part of it is the anxiety that goes around it. The Tourette's itself, I think, is manageable at least for myself. This isn't my own personal experience. For me, I've learned to deal with the tics. The hard part came from the people around, the other people. The Tourette's is something that you eventually just accept, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to spend my whole life being angry and upset that I've afflicted with this. I'd rather learn how to deal with it and then move on from it and focus on other stuff. And that's my aim. But the problem comes from the people who will poke fun at it, and the people who will make you feel a bit left out because of it. You can sometimes begin to think that you're part of that fringe on society that doesn't fit in. But it's not true. We're all, I don't think anyone truly feels like they fully fit in. So it's, there's not a group of people that do fit in and they know that they fit in. And then there's another group of people that don't fit in and they think that they're the only ones. And it's a minority group. There's a lot of us that are struggling with that feeling of fitting in. I think Tourette's makes the challenge a bit more difficult, because not only do you mentally think that you're not fitting in, but physically you're outwardly showing signs of being a bit different to others. But I think, you know what, difference is a good thing. I wouldn't want a world where everyone is wearing the same stuff, where everyone's doing the same thing every day, because then what's there to even enjoy? What's there to talk about? If everyone's doing the same stuff, it makes life very boring. If we learn to accept that there are people that do live, we all live different lives, but some people live different lives with different challenges than majority of people, I think we'll be okay. I can see already that acceptance has come a long way. And regarding every type of mental health stigma or disorder or any disability that people are having, it seems like people are waking up slowly but surely to, being a bit friendlier and accepting. You look at the 1800s, how they would have dealt with stuff like this. Or, in the year like 1000, you'd probably be executed for Tourette's, so like something like that. You'd be burned at the stake for being a witch or something like that. So it shows how, as a society, we have made a lot of progress so far. I still think there's a fair bit of way to go with acceptance, and like universal acceptance, where we can all just, it's a tough one. I guess we all have our own individual challenges with it. For me, yeah, as I said, the hard part was probably the depression and the anxiety that came along with the feelings of being outcast, I guess, and the physical side of tics. But yeah, if anyone else has any other challenges that they've had, it'd be great to hear them.
And my response, and I can do it real quick because I know you need to go, Adam, but to Chanel, for me, I kind of piggyback on what Adam said, is the depression, the anxiety. For me, the worst part of it are the days where it wins. And there are days like that. I know everybody, I see everybody kind of shaking their head and stuff like that. We all have those days where the Tourette's win. And I mean, I know I've seen some of your guys' amazing videos on that. So that would by far be the time when I'm at my lowest with the Tourette's. And I know that some of us have been experiencing that here recently. And so that's where I am on that. And, you know, Adam, is the acceptance has come a long way. And I agree with that, but I want to say before you answer, if I could, it's because of people like you that we've gotten to that point.
Thank you.
So thank you. There are several of very good YouTubers on here and people who are making a difference. And it's because of you guys that we're coming a long way.
Yeah, keep on going, because you know, the more growth that your channels have, the better it is for everyone. It's great. And I was oh wait, I think I lost I forgot what I was going to say. What were you saying, Brian? There was what was the thing you said just before that?
Before the acceptance thing?
Yeah.
I was just talking about how the Tourette's wins. The days.
Yeah, that's what it was. Perfect. So I mean, I've experienced that as well, and I was going to say, like, my Tourette's, I've had times where I've cried over it, you know, where you'll just sit there and it's so much and you can't stop ticking and you'll just burst out crying. And if anyone else has had times like that, you're not alone. It can be a tough thing to deal with. I know, like, for me, I'm quite resilient. I've overcome a lot of different challenges in my life, so I'm fairly well set up to just take it on the chin and just go with it. But there are some people who haven't had to experience as many adversities like that previously, and it can then haven't had to deal with stuff. So if you do find yourself sometimes upset over it or crying because of it, it doesn't make you, you know, weak. It doesn't mean that you're not able to cope with it. It's just our way of dealing with our emotions. It's a tough thing for anyone to deal with it. And the fact that the people, you guys are all here dealing with it and also trying to help other people who are coping, who are struggling with other stuff like that, that shows that your character, you're coping with it better than most people could.
Logan said he's got something quick to say, and then at the beginning everyone was talking about doing a superpowers song together, if you would be interested in doing that.
That would be cool. I'd really love to do that. I'm not sure how to do that.
I don't either, because it's hard to sing over Zoom. Trust me, I tried to teach choir over Zoom and it sucks. So.
There's a way to video edit. Like, I think there's an app called.
Yeah, but it would take forever, and I know Adam's in a hurry and stuff like that. So maybe we can get him back again and do it some other time. That'd be good.
Yeah, if we organize it, do it. I'd love to.
Time.
Yeah, that was kind of one of my points here that I just have to say before everybody starts leaving. Would you be interested in attending future sessions and stuff? I'm going to try and figure out better ways to make sure that everybody's able to join, because the time zones are kind of crazy. So if anybody has any ideas on how to do that, that'd be great. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to. I probably can't attend every session, but I definitely want to come to, maybe every second, every third. It'd be great. I'd love to.
For sure, that'd be awesome.
I've had a lot of fun here today, so thank you guys. It's been really cool to hear all your stories and get to answer some questions and also ask questions as well. Brian, I've found your stories of your teaching and all that, and being able to hear from someone that's older than you that has Tourette's is always very inspiring. It always helps with the worries of the future, of how the hell are you going to deal with it in the future, it's going to affect your life and that. There's a lot of those questions that we can have, especially like me as a teenager. Before I was dating Beth, I was constantly stressed about, like, am I ever going to be able to have a wife and have a normal family with Tourette's and stuff like that? Any of the disorders, it's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves and we think about, whereas we don't have to deal with those thoughts now. But I think it always helps when you can hear people that are a bit further in life than you, in terms of along the line with with building everything up and having to live through it and experience it, it really helps and gives you motivation and inspiration for your life as well. So thank you, Brian. You've helped a lot.
A lot to me.
Thank you.
You can just let me know. That's all right. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Adam,
And thank you, Logan, for sending this up.
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
When we're off here,
Thank you so
Adam,
much for contacting me.
if you ever feel like you need to ask questions for the old guy, you can reach out to me anytime on Instagram.
I would love to, because
Yeah.
I've got a lot of advice to give, but I still need a lot of advice myself, you know?
I'm always happy to help. That's why I'm sitting here with all
Thank
these
you.
fine young people now. So
I'm going to send everybody a code for my website. You can get 50% off anything of my clothing or anything. So
Cool.
if anybody wants
I love
that,
the
that'd be
Logan
great.
using for everything, so I really dig it. Like I went on the website and just that opening like animation, I love it.
Thanks.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I like it too. Opens up
Thanks,
and stuff.
everybody.
All right. Well, I'm
All
gonna
right.
head off, but it was great to meet you guys. Thank you so much. I can't
Thanks,
wait to see you all
Adam.
again.
All right, thank you so much, Adam.
Well, you're
Bye.
right.
Take care, Adam.
See ya.